Washing cheese, honestly, this is the weirdest thing I think I've ever done. I'll admit, bagged cheese is super convenient. I do get this all the time if I just want a quick way to have shredded cheese on top of a taco or for a salad or something like that. But bagged cheese, the pre-shredded stuff, has some additives to it. Nothing bad or alarming, but starches to keep it from clumping up, which could affect the melting of your cheese. So bagged cheese is great. But just be aware that in certain recipes and certain use cases, it may not be as creamy, as stringy as you want it to be, as melty. Especially if you're making a cheese sauce. Certain mac and cheeses, those starches act as a thickener. So I'm gonna do a little test, which something wild I've been seeing is washing shredded cheese. That sounds a little nutty to me. But I'm gonna do a little experiment and see if there's a true difference between bagged cheese, washed cheese, and shredding your own. So I have just some clean, cool water here, and we're gonna just rinse that starch off the cheese. But you can see how cloudy the water is. That's not just the cheese, that's all of the starches that are mixed on there. Look at that cloudy, starchy water. You do want this dry, so I put this right in a spinner, and then you can get all that extra liquid off of there. Woo! That's fun. So now that it's washed, it should be more like fresh shredded cheese because it doesn't have the extra starches on there. What I prefer most of the time, especially if I'm melting a cheese, I just get a block of cheese and grate it myself. The flavor is gonna be a lot better, it's gonna be a lot fresher, and it should give you better results when melting. It's great for pizza when you want it gooey, and honestly, it's not saving you that much time by getting pre-shredded. Okay, maybe it is if you're shredding a ton of cheese. I prefer to shred fresh for better taste and texture. And really, we're talking about seconds, 30 seconds, and I have all the cheese I need. And I would recommend not grating the whole block, just grate what you need and keep the block. It tends to keep better that way. Something else you can do to get this to last longer, shred some, bag it up individually, and you can keep it in your freezer. Funny enough, it's better when you do that and you add a little cornstarch, a little potato starch to your cheese to keep it from clumping. That's what they do in the bagged cheese, but you can make your own pre-shredded cheese, shred the whole block, you can add a little starch or not. Just be aware if you don't and you don't keep it cold, it may clump together a little bit. This really comes down to time saving. I actually bought a pound block of mozzarella cheese and that bag was a pound of pre-shredded mozzarella cheese, the exact same price at the grocery store. Your mileage may vary depending on, the sales or the brand that you get, but just as a control, I wanted it for pound, pound for pound knockout. No, pound for pound, I wanted it to be an even comparison. So really the difference is freshness, grating it your own versus taking a little shortcut and having the pre-shredded cheese. It's like a cup game. We remember which one is which, right? So I prepared a tray and I labeled them. This is as scientific as it usually gets for me. So we're gonna go with just the bagged cheese, nothing done to it. We're gonna put a healthy amount on this tortilla. This would be fun little tortilla pizzas now that I thought about it. Little tomato sauce. All right, that is the bagged cheese unwashed. We're gonna go for the washed in the center. And you can actually feel the difference. Although it does still have a little bit of moisture on it, you can feel it's not as gritty, not as grainy as this cheese. Once again, not bad. It just depends on the recipe you're making. So the extra starch isn't necessarily bad. It's just if you want something super melty, like on a pizza, a quesadilla, a grilled cheese with a good cheese pull, go ahead and grate fresh. I'm gonna call it now. We're not into our final result stage, but I'm gonna call it now. I think instead of washing your cheese, just go ahead and grate it yourself. It's really kind of funky and weird to wash cheese. Maybe it's something you wanna do if you're in a pinch, if this is all you have and you wanna get it melty and gooey. It's a good backup option, but I wouldn't do it on a consistent basis. I kinda went heavy on this one. Maybe we'll take a little bit off so they're a little bit more even. I'm gonna throw this in the oven, let it all melt and see if there's any differences between these. Look, I made a hidden Mickey. Well, it looks like more of a hidden dead mouse. Love me some cheese though. If you are shredding cheese, I think the instinct is pull this out of the fridge, let it sit on the counter while you get kind of prepared, and then you grate it. By that time, it's gotten a little more room temperature and it'll shred easier the colder it is, the firmer it is. So I like to keep it in the fridge. I even cut the piece I need, keep that in the fridge until you're ready to shred, have your shredder ready, And then you can shred with the firmer cheese. The softer the cheese is, the harder it's gonna be to smoothly get through your grater. I've even seen people spray a little nonstick coating on the front and back. Helps for a little bit easier cleaning. I would just do a light coating. You don't want a ton of extra oil in your cheese, but that can help it slide a little bit better. Always protect your fingers. You know, when you get down to the last little bit, I usually flatten my hand, or you just use that as a snacking portion and grate another piece just so your knuckles aren't getting too close. If you notice your grater's a little dull, might be time to upgrade. There's no foolproof ways to really sharpen a grater, so I just pick up a new one. Pick up a good quality one too. Oh, they definitely did seem to melt up a little bit differently. I could have been more scientific, I feel like, and measured the amount of cheese I put on each tortilla so it was the same amount. Here we go. So I'm gonna do some poking and prodding. The bag cheese, you can kind of tell each of the strands kept its shape. So they didn't really like melt together. They just kind of melted individually. That's really funny. It still is gooey, but it doesn't really have like a very soft texture. It just is gooey and the strands kind of keep their shape. That's funny. And then this one is the washed. My guess is this one's, yeah. Washing it does make a difference, but I do notice that even though you dry it out a little bit, it's still adding a little extra moisture, which you may not want. But it's nice and gooey and melty, melting together. Now the freshly grated cheese, look at that. It's actually nice and firm, I think because it didn't have the extra moisture. Let's see the pull test. Oh, gooey. Okay, I see you. So this is the washed. Actually not as gooey still. So there's still a little bit of that starch, but I mean, it's a little gooier. That's still pretty decent. Last stretch test, the bag. I can't even break this apart. Let's see. Yeah, a little tougher, a little clumpier. It's still stretching, but I can tell it's holding together a lot more. Not as gooey, a little bit drier. And it broke pretty easily when the other ones didn't. So this is grated. Tastes like cheesy deliciousness. Yum. Let's just get some of the cheese on this one. Not a lot of tortilla. I can definitely taste that there is more of that moisture there because we washed it. I think because that you want to wash it quickly, that cheese soaks up a lot very quickly. That's why I wouldn't even recommend putting cheese in water anyways, just to rinse off the starch. It's absorbing moisture, you're getting rid of a lot of stuff. It's extra messy, but good, still tastes good. Now this cheese, let's see. A lot chewier. The bag cheese is not gonna be as soft as the washed or grating it yourself. It's very firm, it's very chewy. And even after sitting here a little bit, this is completely dried out and set, while this is still staying nice and shiny and gooey. Same with the grated. So that starch does make a difference. It does keep the cheese from clumping, but obviously different results depending on how you're using it. So just suit your recipes accordingly. I would say if you're melting it, go ahead and shred up some fresh.